The Audrey extravaganza is here. Or past, depending on when I upload this video. Either way, despite not being able to venture out to Wales, I was still able to get in on the celebration via the Just Like Audrey diorama challenge, where you recreate an illustration from the books as a 3D diorama with homemade items. And I'm gonna show you how I did just that. Disclaimer, this is not an instructional guide, which will become really clear as we go on. We got that? Cool, let's go. The first step was to find an illustration to base my diorama around. And with Mountain Engines being my favorite Rarely series book when I was younger, I chose this illustration from the story Devil's Back because, well, I mean, look at it, it's beautiful, that's art. My rough plan for the diorama consisted of this: some 3D mountainous terrain with a 2D painted background, with the challenge limits of 30 centimeters or less taken into consideration. The base was created out of a beer box, which was cut down and modified to match its required measurements. When it came to shaping the mountains, I began making the basic structure out of newspaper before going over it with paper mache, which consisted of cut up paper towels stuck to the structure using a mix of Elmer's glue and water. Once I was satisfied with the structure, after modifying it 10,000 times to match up with the illustration better, I left it to dry for what basically felt like 3 days. Finally, it was ready to paint, but before I could paint the 3D parts, I had to paint the background. First, the sky. I divided the color of the sky into 3 main sections: white, blue, and a sort of washed out purple, with obvious gradients and blended between such. I marked out the shape of the mountains with a pencil and began painting with blue, as it came straight out of the bottle and was in good supply. I then moved on to the purple section, which was a mix of the purple I already had, blue, and white to wash it out a bit. Making enough of it to last painting the bare cardboard, especially one with markings on it like mine, took a while, but I was able to get an effect I was satisfied with. Then came the white, which I obviously used for the white sections and to cover up any small mistakes I made with the other 2 colors. I couldn't mix any more of that purple. With the sky now done, there came the mountains, which for the time being were painted in a base dark brown mix resembling the illustrations, which I plan to go over with other colors later on. With that, it's time to paint the 3D parts of the mountain, first painting parts in that same brown mix of the 2D mountains while I still had it out, before going over some of the portions in a regular brown paint to create highlights, which I also did for the 2D mountains. I was basically going one palette at a time here. Speaking of the 2D mountains, I realized that the height of them was way too big, meaning I would have to paint over them again. Great. After a few attempts at trying to fix it with way too many paint mixes, I got it to a height I was reasonably happy with. Getting back to the 3D surface, I created a mix of white and yellow to use for the area where the track would be, which is when I realized I made it way too big for the scale I was going for. I was not in the mood to pull up all that paper mache and start over, so I did a little perspective trickery and painted the excess in the same brown as the background, to make it appear as if they were a part of that background. I also did the same for the varying shades of paint on the mountain, which I painted through a fixed angle to make the illusion more convincing. After dealing with that and adding more highlights on the surface with white, it was time to paint the track. This proved challenging, as while the track is just a line, it had to go across all 3 sides of my diorama and appear as if it didn't, if that makes any sense. Basically, I'm trying to keep the illusion that this isn't a corner, which after multiple attempts at painting it with a white line to match the illustrations, it was good enough for me. The track in the 3D foreground was comparatively more simple, as it was just a gray stripe hugging the edge. Though with the paint I had being very stiff, it took a while to do the entire thing, especially when counting the adjustments made with the yellow-white mix. Now that we have our track, we need an engine to travel on them. My original plan was to do a simple 2D cutout of Lord Harry and his work van. However, due to the angle of the image, I decided to do them as 3D papercraft models. I designed the blueprints, made them smaller, cut them out, and painted them before folding them into shape, being held together by glue. I also planned to have a Q-tip boiler and funnel, but these models proved to be too small for that, so Lord Harry looks a lot less flattering than he probably would have liked to be. Oh geez. Once stuck down to the diorama, the last step was to glue on the fake smoke and spend way too long trying to adjust it to make it look like the illustrations before giving up. The ultimate solution to every problem in your life. And it was finished. To say I'm completely happy with this would honestly be a lie, especially since this thing made it into the final photo replicating the illustration, which I didn't notice until I already submitted. God damn it. But I won't deny, I'm still really proud of what I did here. I especially like the forced perspective I was able to achieve. Proof that last-minute realizations can be fixed if you're insane enough to do so. It's also neat to finally be able to participate in the Audrey extravaganza, as I usually either can't go or can't participate in the non-in-person events due to being busy with other things. So being able to have a small part in the final one for a while is definitely special, much like the anniversary for the series that inspires it. Right now it's time to disappear for another month. I'm like the G-Man, except I make mediocre content.